Hi, I'm Megan Skivington.
And I'm Fengwen Yu.
Welcome to a new season of the PhilanthroThink podcast series from Carleton University's Philanthropy and Non-profit Leadership Program.
We are excited to bring you a new group of inspiring guests for this second season, each with fresh perspectives on giving and leadership in Canada's philanthropic sector.
Every episode features conversations with wealth creators, nonprofit leaders, and innovative thinkers who are shaping the future of philanthropy.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
Enjoy the show.
Today we are joined by Cherry Chen, a dynamic entrepreneur, a chartered professional accountant who is transforming the nonprofit sector with innovative financial knowledge and leadership. She's the CEO of OTUS Financial Solutions, leading ambitious efforts to help nonprofits build sustainable revenue while maximum impacts.
She's also the founder of Nonprofit CFO and the host of the Unfiltered Non-profit Podcast. Cherry helps charities rethink how they manage their finances, grow revenue streams, and increase their impact.
Cherry, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to dive into your story, your vision, and the insights you have gained through your work. Welcome to PhilanthroThink.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate the invitation. So excited about sharing all these ideas and taking what I see as vision to help the nonprofit sector to the next level and help spreading the word.
Well, this is going to be a great conversation. So why don't we start at the beginning, Cherry?
Sure.
Your journey is really inspiring. From your start in real estate and accounting to becoming a founder and leader in the nonprofit financial strategy space. So why don't we begin, though, with your personal story? And I'm just curious if there's any moments or experiences that helped shape your passion for this space and your drive for your work.
So in my culture and background, I guess I'm putting a very big stereotype there. My background is Chinese and we really love money. Everything it's just sort of related to money. Even when we say Happy New Year, we don't say Happy New Year in Chinese. We say, I wish you rich, as the typical way phrase 恭喜发财. It's really wish you wealth, and prosperity. Not so much on health and happiness, more on getting more money. So we're really money centric to begin with. And I was also brought up in the same culture, but that was also the reason why we started with real estate, business, the accounting side of business, focusing on real estate investors. And over time, you come to having those conversations, and the conversation is really around money making all the time. And it makes your life a little bit bogged down, if you know what I mean. It's always nickel and diming. It's always like, I'm not making enough money. And there's always that void. And in 2014, my husband started this thing called Basket Brigade. Essentially it's following the footsteps or being inspired by Tony Robbins. If you guys know Tony Robbins, he's a big guru, self-help guru out there. And he started this thing called Basket Brigade. And what he did is that he would buy basket of food during Thanksgiving and donate that to the people who are in need. And so instead of having that big thing, what my husband and I started with a couple of friends is that we decided to build our own basket of food in 2014, because that was the year that my daughter was born and she was there as well, and gathered like 5 to 7 friends that year. And we put together baskets and sent it to people who are in need in Hamilton, Ontario. So it was a very life-changing experience. We started doing it, and we do it again the following Easter. We do it again in the Thanksgiving. Then it became an annual tradition. At the peak of our organization, it later became an official charity as well. At the peak of the organization, we have over 200 volunteers at the event, and we raise funds and essentially trying to gather enough funds to give food basket to the people who are in need. And that makes my life a little bit more meaningful. And then we also realized it's actually way harder to raise funds for our organization. So then I go back to the drawing board And then it comes with our nonprofit side of business. I came across that it's a lot more meaningful than just nickel and diming all the time. And I'm actually making an impact by indirectly making an impact to a lot more people. So it makes my accountant a lot more meaningful than just being an accountant, because accountants try. Let's just face it.
I love that. It's interesting too. I'll just add a thought, because I think what's so interesting about your story and going from, accounting, real estate, revenue generation, in the private sector is, I'm sure we'll talk about this today, but it's interesting because I'm a fundraiser by trade. That is my day job. And I've always found, it's interesting because folks have a difficult time talking about money, even in the nonprofit space where it's so imperative. So I think, again, that's where the work that you do to maximize that is so important. And again, maybe we could talk a little bit more as we go about, how you engage with nonprofits in that language and in that, I don't know, maybe building comfort and trust around talking about building revenue and expanding that work. But that's why I think it's so important what you do.
So I share similar cultural background with Cherry because I'm also Chinese. And I'm also an entrepreneur. So I know that being an entrepreneur and working in a nonprofit is quite different. I have a nonprofit organization as well. So I believe those are two different roles. The inner spirit, the operation, and the goal are quite different. So one is to maximize the profit. The other one is to utilize all kinds of resources, including financial resources, to fulfill its mission and create impact. So I'm quite curious, Cherry. So how did you switch between those two mindsets? And along the way, were there any lessons or aha moments that shaped the way you approach the nonprofits with your business background?
So when I first came across this particular industry, the nonprofit industry, it is quite eye-opening. I also recently got my Certified Association Executive designation, and throughout that whole process, together with working with nonprofit organizations throughout the years, the two gave me a really interesting perspective. Let's just put it that way. I found that there are a lot of similarities between running your own business, which is what I do, and running a nonprofit organization, which is a lot of the time what my clients do. We're still talking about, hey, instead of maximizing profit, here is maximizing like Fan said, maximizing the impact. But at the same time, just because it's labeled as a charity, just because it's labeled as nonprofit, it doesn't mean that you are not trying to drive profit. In a different way, like you drive profit, so then you reuse the profit to fund your initiatives in whatever initiative that you are doing. For example, we often go to a local food bank to volunteer every year. We pay to volunteer. We call it volunteer experience. It's a team building experience. We pay for it. We love it. We love it so much that I invited the food bank's executive director to come on my Unfiltered Non-profit Podcast, because during that tour and volunteer experience, he was telling us that the corporate sponsorship that we are contributing, that we're part of, the whole aggregate, he's able to turn it into a profit center to the point that he was able to use the funding that he gets from our profit, like the corporate sponsorship, the experience that we're getting, into something funding the food bank. And they don't need to ask for more money. And they're creating the impact that they need. So just because it is a nonprofit organization, it does not mean that you're not having that entrepreneur mindset. And likewise, on the flip side of it, I think as entrepreneurs, Fan, you could also relate. That's probably why you are asking, you're also having a nonprofit as well. I think we can all do better at creating a better world for everyone. So entrepreneurs should always be just about making money. We should really take ownership. And to be fair, like we still have, till today, I still have the same Basket Brigade charity. We're working on donating to local schools in this day and age, I don't want to create another basket brigade event. But what we do is we order directly and we donate directly to the school for kids who are in need. And I find it a lot easier for me to raise funds by running a better business and contributing a portion of our profit into our charity than putting the effort into raising funds altogether in the public. So there are similarities in both sides. It's just that how you apply those principles may be slightly different. You're just applying, yes, I still want maximum benefit from running my sponsorship program, but how you use a profit is different.
Yeah, that's very good insight. I like when you mentioned that nonprofit is just a label given by CRA. What we can do is that because like philanthropy, like we are in the philanthropy, like in the program, like we have professionals from different backgrounds, and the philanthropic practice is different, like in every country, let alone like the terms and tax structure. But maybe what really matters is like what we do in the end, how many people we connect with, how many people we help and be cared of.
I love this conversation about entrepreneurial thinking and mindset, because I really do think that is where so much innovation comes from in the sector, whether it's, again, from like outside partners who are like infusing that in, or whether it's from leaders who are doing really great things directly. That really is what's driving change and big thinking. So what I'm wondering, Cherry, is understanding again that you have that mindset, that you're already implementing, this in numerous ways. I'd like to ask you about another specific initiative that, again, I'd like to hear more about, because it's specific to that like big thinking that, again, I think entrepreneurs naturally embody. And that's the $50 million revenue generational goal. So would love to hear a little bit more about that initiative and how your entrepreneurial background shapes your approach to this sort of development of big vision.
That I wanted to really make some changes in the industry. What I really wanted to do is to help organizations, nonprofit organizations, to increase their revenue. Over the next 10 years, we wanted to help nonprofit organizations to save and raise about $50 million additional revenue, so then they can become self-sustaining. So then they don't have to worry about going to that constant struggle of, hey, I need to apply for funding and I get funding and I work on the project that I get the funding for. And then now I don't have money and then I have to apply for it again. And then that vicious cycle. I don't like to see that. I like to see that organizations out there that are doing good things to be able to get to the financial position that are self-sustaining. So as an example, recently we are working with a nonprofit organizations to help them essentially implement a licensing program. We come up with the financial impact of it. Obviously, we can't be the one doing all the work. We're a financial consultant. So we come up with the program and we recommend it to the board. Now, whether it is going to be going to go through, it is not up to us, obviously, but we're trying to be proactive and creative. And then we also tell our client, hey, these are your numbers with your marketing, with your sponsorship, with your annual event. We can increase it. We do a little bit of consultation on the event planning side, monitor their budget, monitor their expenses, and indirectly help contributing to the $50 million goal.
That's really exciting, inspiring, and ambitious. Like, and I also read about the story behind the goal, like the conversation between you with your dad over the golf course, where you realize the importance of financial independence. And in reality, like financial health is one of the top priority for many like nonprofit organizations. So I can say that there is a huge like market needs behind this, and I'm sure it's gonna have a profound like impact. So how do you say like this revenue like this new initiative will shape like the landscape of nonprofits in Canada, and what are some of the challenges or opportunities do you say in making this initiative a reality?
nonprofit organizations raising their revenue and diversifying their revenue stream, they see that as a great opportunity. They see that, we all see that it's a need. I'm sure, Megan, you're in the business and you know how it is. Then when you also have your own nonprofit, so you know how it is. But the reality is that there's a lot of bureaucracies behind the scene and a lot of reluctance to change. You can propose whatever you want to propose. We can propose that, hey, you should have online course training. You should at least ask for donation at the end of your every single email. That's what I told my client. They have everything that they want to essentially do. But then when it comes down to board approval, resources allocation, they're looking at it, they're like, well, I'm already stretched. I don't think we should go in and hire another fundraiser to put our effort in fundraising. And this is a true story, by the way. I just had that conversation last week with the client. And it's really sad. They know that they need some dedicated effort, but then the money is not there. And it goes back to that vicious cycle. We have it, we know we need it, but then we don't have resources and then we don't have money. So we cannot generate more revenue. And it's pretty much a vicious cycle going back and forth. Reluctance to change is another thing. Sometimes when there are disruption, especially technology nowadays with AI, it's not easy for people to adapt or make the decision to change. And sometimes it's as simple as, hey, like if AI can replace a person, nonprofit may not be able to make the change and adapt to the market immediately, and they lose some opportunities in terms of fundraising. But then if you ask me, the biggest opportunity is still there. I think if you are someone who is self-sustainable, the government is more willing to give you money because you're not relying on them. Your donor would be more willing to give you money because, hey, all your admin costs are already covered by your basic programming that you are the one in charge doing. Their dollar is going straight to the people that you're serving. It makes a lot better. It makes a lot more sense if you are able to pull that together. Megan, maybe you can chime in because you're the front line raising funds.
Oh yeah, everything you're saying is resonating, Cherry. Like I'm nodding along because I've seen it in many different spaces. I think it comes from a place of both hesitancy around change and also the scarcity mindset of we can't necessarily spend money to make money because we are so, concerned all the time about obviously keeping our administrative numbers as low as possible or output as low as possible. We also have concerns from the board. Like it's a very crowded headspace when it comes to this type of investment and output. And you're right, a lot of opportunity is missed. I've seen that many times. And, it's such a challenge. I think, again, it's the wider reflection is also that the nonprofit sector so desperately needs to keep up because we serve so many people and in so many spaces, but we're also taxed and stretched. And, you have a lot of people doing more than the typical worker might have to do day to day. Like I think of, the average fundraiser in a small operation might also be the administrator, the CFO, the everything, right? So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And so I always wonder what are either the baby steps that organizations can take towards either flexing the muscle around flexibility when it comes to change, or, what are the proof points that we need to talk about more and more when it comes to maximizing efficiency or making changes that are going to help productivity or help, organizations run better? Because ultimately, to your point, that leads to more people being helped. That leads to greater impact. That leads to everyone becoming more satisfied. Hopefully also having fundraisers like myself burning out less. Like it's a lot of win-win, but it feels like an uphill battle. So that's why I do appreciate, again, like the external opinion, because it's like we need the validation that like change is good. Like we need to do more of this. I love this theme of reflecting on the industry as well, Cherry. And again, we know you're a podcast host yourself, and your podcast, the Unfiltered Non-profit Podcast. What I'm wondering about is, we've heard you talk about your client experiences and what you're seeing on the ground day to day. But what I'm also wondering is, like, who are you talking to on your podcast? Who are the typical guests that you have? And what are their reflections on the space as well? And, when it comes to the greater emerging themes that we're seeing for the nonprofit sector, like, what are you seeing and what are you hearing from those philanthropists and wealth makers?
Yeah, so I interview many people from nonprofit. They're all executive directors level at a nonprofit organization, whether from association to regular nonprofit, all the way to charities. And before I get them on my show, we would have a conversation with them first to make sure that they have something worthwhile sharing. Now, the reason why I mentioned that is not because everyone has a lesson to share. It's just because I have this goal in my head that I would love to create the Unfiltered Nonprofit, create a platform leveraging the nonprofit podcast to allow the executive director to mastermind with everyone. To your point, Megan, I think nonprofit leaders are really tough to be in. They don't just have one boss, they have a board of directors to manage. And then underneath them, they have a team to manage. They are a sandwich in between, and it's a unique bunch because they have to handle the politics, or maybe no politics, just the sheer volume of managing the board, but they also have to manage the team. And my goal with the nonprofit podcast, the Unfiltered Nonprofit Podcast, is to let them navigate and learn from each other at their own time, at their own pace. And I've spoken to many nonprofit leaders. Some of them were former politicians. Some of them are just pure dropping nuggets left, right, and center. I really appreciate every single one of them. And one of the common theme that we talked about is the challenge of getting your next funding, the challenge of maintaining that revenue, the challenge of also not necessarily managing the team, but having so much on their shoulder, and they have to make time. It's hard for them to make time for themselves. And what I've seen from charity organizations is that they are depending on the person leading the organization. Some of them, if they have a lot of them would come with the experience of raising funds. And I have I actually previously just interviewed my client, one of my client who constantly raise funds, and he's got a lot of experience. He has a lofty goal, and having that as the focus of the organization is also very different from having a person who is more on the scarcity mindset, and you are not able to drive the effort. So having that leaders knowing what the priority is also extremely important. In that case, the priority was to double their revenue in the next 3 years. That was what his goal was. And it was very interesting hearing that. And the other thing that I hear a lot is the ability to manage their board. I don't know if that is something that we should focus on today. But managing the board and the ability to navigate the navigate the overly engaged board and manage them, and then drive them back to the strategic plan is something that our industry leaders are managing on a daily, sometimes struggling on a daily basis.
And now, a word from IG Private Wealth Management. Hi, and welcome to PhilanthroThink's special mini episode with IG Private Wealth Management. Today, we are joined by Trina Nault, owner of Nault Group Private Wealth Management. We're so glad to have her here to continue our exploration of philanthropy and business with IG Private Wealth Management. Trina, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Trina, philanthropy can sound like a big, formal word. But at the end of the day, it's really just about giving with intention. A lot of people don't see themselves as philanthropists, right? So how do we guide them towards thinking about charitable giving, not just as a generous act, but something that can be smart and strategic as part of their overall financial plan?
Sure. And I mean, I agree. Philanthropy does sound like a big word. Usually conjures up big names like Bill Gates or Carnegie. But really the definition, like you said, is so much simpler. It's simply defined as the desire to promote the welfare of others. The beauty of financial planning and a well thought out financial plan is donating and working philanthropy in at opportune times. I do have an example I can share. Clients who advocate for youth programs in our community were retiring. And they were very passionate about, possibly saving some tax in their retirement plan, but also somehow setting up something that was going to help the youth in the community. So we set up a legacy fund with a portion of their investments. In this example, let's just use $50,000 just to give some numbers around. They chose to support specific youth programs annually, and unless they decide otherwise, those programs are going to be benefited year after year after year through this program. Program itself, if granting the minimum percent, the donor advised fund, if granting the minimum percent, really will last beyond their lifetime, because that 50,000 will continue to grow, and then that minimum percent will be granted to these youth programs within the community. It's an amazing legacy that's going to really outlive them. There's some added bonuses as far as the financial planning side goes. The original 50,000 is a charitable donation. So it gave them a very healthy tax credit in your retirement where they were taking in extra income. So that they really loved that. And then secondly, they ended up using some investments that they already had that had a taxable capital gain attached to them. And by donating those taxable capital gain investments directly to a charitable organization through their donor advised fund, they saved that tax. They didn't have to pay that tax. So it's kind of like a double tax savings, plus they really got to benefit charities and causes that were very dear to their heart.
Which operates independently from IG Wealth Management. Donations are irrevocable and vest with the foundation. This information is general in nature and not intended to be professional tax advice. Please read the program guide for complete details, including fees and expenses. Mutual funds and investment products and services are offered through the Mutual Fund Division of IG Wealth Management Inc., registered in Quebec as a firm in financial planning. Additional investment products and brokerage services are offered through the investment dealer IG Wealth Management Inc., registered in Quebec as a financial planning firm, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund.
Now, back to the show.
So after so many conversations with nonprofit leaders, and also you have a strong investment background, so I believe you have a sharp sense of the broader economic landscape. And at the right time, you mentioned that a lot of nonprofits, they have problems in getting fundings. And also because the federal is cutting the funding, and also the big corporates are laying off employees. That's the state scale we are having right now. So from your perspective and the conversation you with the leaders in the sector, so what emerging trends are you observing in the nonprofit sector that will shape the sector in the next 3 to 5 years?
What I see in the nonprofit sector, again, I could be having this confirmation bias because I have this lofty goal of helping nonprofit organization raising $50 million over the next 10 years. What I see, or maybe what I seek out to see, is also that I see a lot of changes in the industry. A lot of people are setting up social enterprise. A lot of people are trying different things to generate money. And some leaders are more adventurous than the other. Some are lucky enough to have the board support immediately, and some are not. But a lot of them are seeking changes. A lot of them see that diversifying revenue is the need, and there is no other way to go because of what Fan Wang was just mentioning. Federal government is cutting their funding. There is only so much in the pie for everyone. So we all know that it's coming. So we have to make changes, just like private sector. They are leveraging, the economy is not doing well. Private sector has to cut their budget. And in nonprofit organization, we also have to figure out ways to make changes so that we can generate enough revenue to serve even more people than before because the demand is going up.
So understanding, again, the trends ahead that I think we're all seeing, where it is, we have to brace ourselves. We have to, again, think differently, use different models of revenue generation and building to support the initiatives we work for, serve, support in many different ways. So I'm just wondering, thinking about, again, how do we provide a roadmap for folks working in this space? What advice would you give either Canadian philanthropists or wealth builders or folks working in the industry, those executive directors, when it comes to, again, facing the next 3 to 5 years, and we want to increase revenue, we want to increase generosity, but how do we break that down? What is like the next couple of steps for all of them?
I think, Megan, you know a lot better than I do to a certain extent. But from what I've seen, I've once read a book called Little Bet. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book. You may think if I bring this up to my clients, I think they may not want to listen to it, just because Little Bets is about building business. It's not about building business. It has an entrepreneur wrapper around it. And then often when you propose something that works in the for-profit sector to a nonprofit leader, they immediately shut down. But bear with me. Little Bet, the story behind Little Bet is essentially making changes, but you don't go in and make changes immediately. Like, hey, I identify that if we were to run a camp for the youth, it would generate so much money, by this much money. But do you jump all in? You don't have to jump all in. You can start by having, hey, maybe I'll just do a March break camp, or maybe we'll just do a 1-day PA day camp. Maybe we'll just do $100, $200 on Facebook and see how it goes. And that's how the Little Bet start. It doesn't start with a full-blown 8-week summer program. It starts with like maybe testing out one idea, see if it sticks, and define the success metrics at the beginning, and put in the bare minimum financial resources and also human resources available, pull them together, leverage volunteer. I think that's number one. Recognizing that when you do something and you're making changes, you don't have to go all in all at once. It could be step by step, and having that Little Bet mindset really helps. The second thing that I would suggest is that beyond that Little Bet is to listen and build a community around your purpose. I think the reason why I'm in the nonprofit sector, I'm servicing this, is because of the purpose behind it. I can service more people. Generally speaking, we all want to see everyone succeed. And I do believe that every nonprofit organizations out there has their own reason to exist. And you have members, you have donors, they follow you because of your cause. And we need to be better. When I say we, all the nonprofit leaders need to be better at communicating what our real stories behind what are our why. And you also need to communicate consistently. And what I've seen in the nonprofit sector is that, hey, like I'm in the cancer nonprofit sector. I would only send email once a month because I don't want to bombard each of my email subscriber with too many emails. We're concerned about how they receive it, but we're not focusing enough in telling our story to rally their emotion and also their help. So it's not necessarily monetary help that we're going to get, but we could also get them to volunteer for us. And we could also leverage whatever help that we can get. And I think that's also very important. Lastly, but not least, is being creative. I have an organization that I interview on my nonprofit podcast. She leveraged all these sponsorship to be able to tell her story, and her organization is about mental health, and she's able to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of sponsorship, equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars, telling their organization story about mental health at the Toronto Eden Center. Toronto Dundas Square. So it's something that they don't get money for, but they are achieving their cause as well. So these are being creative, and that's what you can get your cause further.
So Cherry, you wear so many hats, like an entrepreneur, a financial leader, a philanthropist, a podcast host, and a mother and an author too. So, and you balance them so well. And I've noticed this become more and more common, like in our program, like many students, and I believe many of our listeners, many of them are also juggling multiple roles. So would you be able to share from your experience, is there any good strategy or habit that help you to keep you focused while still growing in all these areas?
You're so kind because I feel like everyone is juggling every single day. I'm sure Feng Wang and Megan, you guys are both juggling multiple things all at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I do run my own business. I am a mom as well of 2 young kids. I know what I'm going to share. It's so average. It's almost like average advice out there. What I do a lot is I work out. I try to lift weight 3 times a week, and I also try to exercise 2 more times a week. So in total, I get to exercise like almost 5 days a week. And then the second thing that I do is I do gratitude journal. So I do have with my team, we get together every morning because I also have some team members that are far away. They don't live close to me and I don't get to see them. And for the most part, our team is hybrid. So what we do when we get together, do our daily huddle, the first thing that we start off is our daily gratitude. So what we're thankful for the day. And sometimes it's so lame, or I'm grateful for the weather. Sometimes you get really good story. Or I'm grateful for this particular team member who helped me with this issue. Sometimes it's as silly as, oh, I'm so grateful that my client finally got back to me after I chased them for like 20 times. So you hear all these things and it puts you in the right mindset that there is always something that you can appreciate in life, and no matter how hard it is. And the last thing that I want to share is my planner. Whatever I write down, it's going to happen. But if I don't plan for the day, I usually plan for my day at the beginning of the day. And if I don't plan that day, I know my day would go into a mess. It's just because I don't have prioritized. And so that's how I survive. And by no means I know everything. And I'm sure I'm still a mess from time to time.
Thank you so much for sharing your habits. I really love like the tip of doing like the gratitude thing. It's really helpful for me as well. And I do plan for my day. If I don't plan, like I normally plan the day before, like the night. If I don't do it, like my tomorrow will be a mess. And every time if I plan it well, I will accomplish everything tomorrow.
And I just want to say, I admire the 5-day-a-week exercise regime because I definitely do my best and never achieve that many times. So bravo, Cherry. That's very, very helpful.
That's also atomic habit, right? Like
Yeah.
my goal setting is very low. So maybe sometimes I'm just walking on a treadmill while I'm having my meeting, and that's my exercise for the day. But
love that.
At least I'm moving.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very accessible. So thank you.
So Cherry, it's been such a pleasure to hear your story and to learn about how you bridge the finance and nonprofits. So it really gives me a new perspective on what nonprofits can achieve in future. So thank you so much for sharing that. There is a tradition on this podcast. Each guest leaves a question for the next guest to think about. So in our last episode, Vanda Brascopi, co-founder of the Indigenous Peoples Resilience Fund, asked the question. So as we look into the future of philanthropy, what's one shift can make tomorrow personally or institutionally that would move us closer to a sector that truly centers people, relationships, and community wisdom first?
Canada has been behind in building out infrastructure. I think one shift the funder can focus on is that instead of focusing on, hey, how many people am I going to serve by donating this, cutting this check this particular year? is to focus on how can I help the nonprofit sector to build the infrastructure that they need so then they would be able to succeed for the next 10 years. And I think that's a little bit missing. Maybe Megan, you can chime in as well, because I also want to see, I don't see a lot of fundraising activities or questions being asked by funders on specifically on like building the infrastructure, even the building the CRM. Nobody is really trying to focus on that area, but rather what's my dollar going today?
Yeah, just to add to that, that actually reminds me of our discussion with Wanda, because we talked again a lot about, it was sort of like, what are we doing to invest for the future? What are we thinking about that, again, is building longevity? And when you talk about, Cherry, building that foundation, building structure that's going to last longer than this cycle of funding, I think that thinking is so important. And it really does speak to the legacy that we're all trying to create. And, that being the purpose behind why we're working in the industry or we're giving to the industry or whatever that looks like. But that shift does take, I think, almost a bit of slowing down and reflection, because when you're building something that's going to last, that takes long-term thinking, but I think that's imperative too. So I really agree with that thinking. So, Cherry, it's now your turn as our guest today to pose a question for our next guest. So we don't know who that guest is just yet. It's a surprise to us and to you. But again, this is going to be someone like yourself working in the space in one way or another, a leader in their own right. So I'm wondering, what question would you like to ask our next guest? So imagine that they're a wealth builder, a change maker, a philanthropist, someone working in the space.
So the biggest one that I would say, it at least from my perspective, is how do I help the next generation of nonprofit leaders to be willing to be able to make changes and be not afraid, be courageous enough to make changes and adapt to the current economic trend?
Well, that's a great question, Cherry. We look forward to posing that to our next guest. And again, Fengman and I have enjoyed our conversation with you so much. And we really appreciate your time, sharing your experience and your reflections. And I think, again, what you've given us as a takeaway is a lot to think about when it comes to how we can be productive in building the future that we want for this space, the nonprofit sector. And I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate the advice that you've given. Thank you.
Thank you, Fengman. Thank you, Megan. Really appreciate the opportunity